Welcome to the Friday night live show with Dr. Defacto. See if any of you are out there. Doesn't look like it yet. Waiting for at least one person to show. Well, anyway, I guess I could talk about my day while I'm waiting for people to show up. And it's relevant because, I made that workplace harassment solutions video. And I went out today, and I suppose I could post it if you guys don't believe me a little bit later. I worked for around 6 hours. I kinda slacked it today because, on Friday, I usually quit early because people kinda get crazy. They drive around, wild. It's Friday night, they're excited, it's the weekend, and, it can get kinda crazy. But I only worked for about 6 hours. I made around $153, and, that's not bad, It was like 13 deliveries. So, if you divide that out, that's pretty good money. My point is, though, nobody has taken advantage of that referral. I thought at least one person. I mean, $600, you can't beat that, man. 220 deliveries. I went out for 6 hours. I got 13 deliveries, and I was driving long distances too. My buddy up in Albert Lee, he's I think there's only 20,000 people up there. He can drive across town in no time, and it doesn't take him long. And he's usually making around 20 bucks an hour. But man, 600 bucks. All you have to do is use the referral code, and you could do it easily. I mean, it's basically free money. So I mean, if you we'll just average that out. We'll just say that today, like I said, it was around 150 bucks for 6 hours. You add that up, that's, what, 12 bucks a delivery or something like that? We'll take it down to $9 a delivery. You do that with 220 deliveries, that's damn near $2,000 plus the bonus, that's over 2,500 bucks. Can't beat that. Well, it looks like we have some people showing up here. But I would love to see at least one person. I mean, targeted individuals talk about workplace harassment all the time, and it's a solution. I've been doing it for years. I've been doing it since 2018. And I make between 35 and $40,000 a year, Um, it's not bad. I mean, it pays the bills. And the best part is you get to write most of that off with your mileage deduction because you're technically a contractor. You own your own business. And so you get, like, I think the FSLA amount's like 65 cents a mile, right? So what does that mean? That means that you're not paying taxes because you're writing everything off. You're taking a standard deduction, and you're under the limit of for where you can get actually free healthcare, right? So you can get Medicaid because you qualify for it because you're writing most of those expenses off. So it works out. I mean, there's a lot of bonuses to it. The other thing, since we're waiting for people to show up, I thought I'd talk about it. I used to talk to a targeted individual truck driver a long time ago, and he was complaining about the retirement age, which it's ridiculous. You got to wait until you're 67 years old. You know, I mean, are you really going to want to retire and go out and travel around and do a bunch of stuff? You're almost 70, and the life of a targeted individual is pretty rough. I'm thinking, man, that's what do I do? And really, it's a mathematical equation. When you look at it, you could still retire at 62, but of course, you're taking a 30% reduction on your pay. So if you were looking at, I don't know, $2,000 a month, that'd be about $600 cut, which isn't that big a deal. So what do? Well, it's 5 years early. So you're going to make what, 90, $100,000 within that 5 years. So you're getting it anyway. But the best part of it is you could still do DoorDash. A lot of retirees do that around here. So, I mean, think about it. You go out for a day or two, you make 250, 300 bucks, and you only have to work for 2 weeks. You make up that $600 and you can still retire at 62. I mean, it works. Okay. Why wait until you're 67 years old, man? I mean, they should let us retire at 50. Okay. Targeted individuals should be able to retire at 40 because we deal with way too much stuff. How many people we got out there? We got six. We got six people out there. Well, I suppose we could get into some stuff here. I talked enough about DoorDash and retirement. That's a lot of people would say that's depressing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit too, because targeted individuals can deal with that. Um, Speaking of my workday, I don't know if you guys are going to share my my opinion on this one. So I don't know. Not everything is gang stalking. Okay, so you got to be careful. What your criteria is before you jump to a conclusion or whatever. But I was at a delivery at Chick-fil-A yesterday, right? And walk in and I get the delivery and I'm walking out. And this guy, he runs out. Never seen him before. Okay. And usually I've seen most of the delivery drivers at least once, and usually I know who they are. I've talked to them in the stores, whatever, but I've never seen this guy before, and he comes running up. He goes, "Oh, you got something on your phone, man." And I'm like, "What?" And since I looked at my phone, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so, but he wanted to talk to me. So I sat to talk to him for a minute. I said, well, yeah, okay. So I got a delivery here and see you later. Have a good day. And so anyway, whatever. I thought it was a little odd, but that's no big deal. And so I finished out the day. And as I've told you guys before, if you're worried about people breaking into your house, just you know, European shop, right? Be a European shopper. Go get your stuff, every day at after work or whatever. That's what I do. I don't keep anything in my house. It's embarrassing. Okay, but I've dealt with break-ins. We're going to talk about that a little bit too. What happens to targets when people break into their house? Well, anything could happen. I mean, a lot of times it's just psychological games. Maybe they move somebody. You don't know what they're doing. And, if they're trying to drive you nuts, if they're assaulting you in ways where they wanna, get you to harm yourself, commit suicide, or harm other people, or go crazy or whatever, who knows what they're gonna do to your food? Who knows what they're gonna do to anything? It's just creepy thinking about it. But anyway, so I do that, okay? This, as I've mentioned before, I live, by protocol. I don't have to sit around and wonder, is something wrong with this or is this going to happen? I just, it's just why I don't make a big deal out of it. And I don't waste food either. But anyway, so I go to the store and, I'm going in there and all of a sudden here he comes. He comes running up behind me. He goes, "Oh, hey, man." And there he is again. Right. And so, town of 100 and what, 20, 130,000 people. Never seen the guy before. Just comes up to me and says, "Oh, yeah, you've got something on your now he wants to talk to me." I'm like, all right, it depends on how much energy I've got. Okay. Because, a lot of times as a targeted individual, and you guys know this, is that you just get zapped. You don't have energy. You don't want to deal, especially those bad days. They know, where you're getting hit with everything and you're completely out of energy or whatever. And I usually at that point, I don't even acknowledge people. It's like I'm looking right through them. But I had some energy, so I'm going to talk to this guy. And so we're sitting around talking, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm a DoorDash driver too." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And so we, kind of talked about some of the logistical stuff or whatever. And I said, "So have you noticed, the change in wages since we had this little deal thing here and little promotion thing?" And he's, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm making like $300 a day." I'm like, "What?" I just, that's quite a bit of money for a DoorDash driver. I could see somebody pulling, maybe 200, 250 if they're working long hours. I said, "Well, what times you go to work?" He's like, "Noon." I started at noon. I'm like, "Really? So you just got off now? It's like 7 o'clock. You made 200 and what, 75, $300?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And at this point, I'm thinking this guy he's full of it. And just to make a point, a lot of times targeted individuals will deal with that and I've talked about the fact that a lot of times, it's a lateral comparison scenario where targeted individuals are dealing with deprivation, whether they're dealing with social deprivation or, they're getting harassed at work, there's financial deprivation or whatever. And you look around and it seems like the whole world is just skipping along, having a great time. And there you are, dealing with whatever whatever. And so I'm thinking this is suspicious. First, this dude just shows up and says, just comes up to me for no reason. It's, wants to talk to me about my phone. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing him, but he's making $300 a day. And at that point, I'm thinking I could call him out. I could call the guy out, but whatever. So I don't know. I'm waiting to see this guy again. And it's, as far as I could tell, I guess I'm supposed to be depressed that I'm not making $300 a day. I don't know. Whatever. I'm doing okay. Anyway, I guess that would be an example of some of the first stuff that I mentioned, which would be terrorism tactics that targeted individuals deal with. It's terrorism. Gang stalking is straight up terrorism, man. Um, and you know, whether it's the break-ins or the directed conversations or the innuendos or some of the stuff that targeted individuals deal with in traffic. A lot of people talk about the brighting, people doing that. I've had that happen, man, and it's annoying, right? Somebody will get up and just they'll be following you way too close, and it's like, what's up with you, and it's like they're chasing you or whatever, and then they'll pull up and drive by you, rev their engines or whatever. You get those vehicles with the loud, the loud motors, the no muffler thing, which I think a lot of kids think that's cool now. So they're tuning their cars in a way to make them louder. So it's even worse, you know. And like I said, you got to be careful what you consider stalking, though, because you can start reading into stuff. But it's full of terrorism. Gang stalking is basically terrorism. And you get to the point where you're conditioned and you become apprehensive. That's really the byproduct that they're looking for with that activity, right? Because what happens, of course, you're going to be paranoid, you're going to be traumatized. It gives them the opportunity to kind of give that mental tattoo to the targeted individual to where there's that marker. It's almost like timeline gaslighting, right? Because you're dealing, with an infiltration into your brain. Okay, so because that's really what conditioning is, because I've talked about the fact that targets, they could just be reminded of something. It doesn't even have to be gang stalking after they experience a lot of this stuff, and they'll just start thinking about it, right? So it's a type of invasion. It's that traumatic effect, but what the conditioning. Well, now you're going to have triggers, right? So it's compounded, and then you're apprehensive. So it's like a sensitization effect, And I've heard a lot of targets talk about that when they get attacked in a certain way, maybe with I don't know, a certain stimuli, whatever that is. Maybe it's a little tune that they're whistling or something, or some keywords that they use in their directed conversations or whatever. And the targeted individual is already anticipating being attacked because they get so much attention to begin with that eventually it's basically something that you're waiting for, right? And a lot of those things were annoying to begin with, but now that now that you've had a chance to anticipate, sit around and wonder what's going to happen next, it's just like nails on a chalkboard, right? So it's reciprocity, man. You have all these things, and it's like I said, it's just basically terrorism. And when people get followed, when people deal with that surveillance aspect of gang stalking, it's the same way because now you don't, a lot of targeted individuals, they don't even want to leave their house. Okay. It's like, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to deal with it. Why? Well, you're anticipating. What are you You're anticipating negative things. You're anticipating getting attacked, getting harassed, and a lot of times targets are at their wits' end. Okay, they're drained. It's just one more thing, and it can even be worse than that too if you're living in an apartment complex or something like that. Maybe you're dealing with it in your family. Okay, which comes to the next aspect, and that's those little flying monkeys, right? And when you're a targeted individual, there's a lot of there's a lot of ganging up on the victim. Okay, and that you know it can happen with strangers. It can happen at random. In the environment of the targeted individual, but for that constant subjection, right? Well, there's infiltration, and there's infiltration in the family, usually, of the target somehow, some way. The speculating of how all this stuff happens. I mean, that's when it really gets weird, but it does, and you're around it in a way where you're getting constant reminders of whatever it is that you're dealing with. Okay, and that's classic for gang stalking. Okay, just when you start to relax, just when you're maybe taking a day off or whatever, or you're getting ready to go to bed or whatever, you're gonna experience that form of terrorism, and then you got the flying monkeys that are gonna be there with the directed conversations, with the innuendos, with the gaslighting, right? With those reminders, and it's a constant. I don't know. It's like a toxic soup, and the environment of the targeted individual is well, it's basically saturated with this stuff. And depending on who you are, depending on how you deal with this stuff, it is going to back off eventually. Okay, and it can happen for long periods of time. I've mentioned that it might be years. A lot of targeted individuals will jump to the conclusion that their gang stalking is over. All right, I'm free. Really? Well, I mean, it can happen that way. I've heard of people that but not really though. I mean, I've heard of individuals who are experiencing things that are like gang stalking, community harassment, or whatever, or maybe workplace harassment that was intense, or maybe they started to wonder if they were getting followed because of a whistleblowing incident or something that happened, maybe a lawsuit, but then it just kind of went away, right? But to me, that's a form of gang stalking. I mean, it's significant. It's group mobbing. I'm not going to deny that, but the targeted individual that's experiencing higher forms of harassment where they're just getting it everywhere. They're trying to escape, and they can't. They're moving. They're relocating. They can't get away. I don't know. I've never really heard of it going away. And you get people, oh yeah, my gang stalking is over. I'm done and everything. Really? I don't know. But it could very well be that they're just in that period, right? In that, I don't know, you want to call it the marinate stage where they are just kind of soaking in all the things that has happened to them, their prior experiences, right? All the little games that they've played, and they got to sit around and think about it. And a lot of times, targets can become acclimated to the point where they figure out that it's reaction based. You guys are clever. If you've been a targeted individual for a long time, they want a reaction. You're aware of the motive of this stuff. The game that you're playing. And for those reasons, if nothing else, they just kind of back off a little bit. And I've seen it. I've seen it happen for years. And you get back to life. But it does play in to that type of game that involves that anticipation, right? It's still a form of terrorism because when it happens again, well, now you're like, oh man, I would have bet everything that it was over. I never would have, maybe even 3, 4, 5, 6 years later, you know, they come back. They start playing the games again, right? And it's not subtle either, and it could even be worse than before. At least that's what I experienced. Okay. But, now what? Well, now you're into that place where there's just, there's nothing that you can hope for. There is though. Okay. But that's what they want. They want you to get into that place of depression and hopelessness, because, you thought you were free. You thought you got away. You thought it stopped. Some targeted individuals might only get maybe a month. They might get a week, but you want to get back to life. And the things that you've been conditioned with, all these little, I don't know, fears and phobias that build up in the targeted individual's life, because that is part of gang stalking, right? It's like I said, a lot of targets will get to the point where they want to find reasons not to go out, or they might just, you know, start avoiding people altogether. They might become agoraphobic. You know, why not? I mean, I was for a while. I'm going to admit it. When I first started experiencing this stuff, I avoided everybody. And I didn't even know what was going on. And I've talked about that before. That I uh, I didn't have a targeted individual community. I didn't know that there was other people out there experiencing this stuff. It was just creepy. I speculated that I was dealing with some type of cult, underground secret society that had these little chapters everywhere. I didn't know what the hell was going on, and then I realized that it was a lot worse than that. When you get to the foundations of this stuff, I believe in the spiritual explanation. I believe it's literally demonic, and then manifests out in all these different hierarchies where you get into the secret societies. You do have the occult stuff, you have the government stuff, you have the MK Ultra, all of it. It's all connected, man. You know. And some of the people involved, some of the flying monkeys, some of the zombies, the psychic vampires, some of them know what's going on. But some people don't. And you have the social dynamics at play and everything. But getting back to it, it all kind of, you could basically sum it up by calling it a type of terrorism. And even if you do experience that break, even if it does stop for a while, um, what happens to the target, the people that are experiencing higher forms of harassment? Well, it starts again, and it can even be worse, right? And so then it plays into that hopelessness that all targeted individuals deal with, because you want to get back to your life, you want to get back to living, and I've done it, and then it came back, and it was actually worse. And you got to make lemonade out of something like that. Um, and what we know when it comes to some of the terrorism, it's a lot of people talk about those directed conversations, and if they've got you within earshot, that's really all it takes. And I've talked about the fact that you've got to ignore, you got to get to the point where you just process this stuff as a childish, you know I don't know, ridiculous, evil, unproductive, just something that is not really worthy of your attention. Because at first it's scary when the target gets hit with this stuff. There's personal information involved. There's all kinds of weird things happening, and it really freaks the target out. And of course, that compels the individual to pay attention to it. And for new targets, it's devastating. And then you get to the point where you're looking for it, and you can't really tune these people out, and it doesn't seem like you can go anywhere, right? Wherever you're, at the laundromat, you're at the doctor's office, you're shopping or whatever, and then here comes the perp, and they've got something to say, or there'll be people kind of following you around. I've mentioned that guy up in Canada I used to talk to, and he said that he finally just got some headphones because these people were literally following him around on his commute. And even when he got the headphones, they just started, talking louder. I mean, they're persistent, but if they've got you within earshot, they're going to try and do that, you know. And you have to process the information for what it is. You have to consider the source. And a lot of the time, targets will be attacked with things that obviously are personal, but some of it is dirt. They will always look for dirt, and they will try to shame the target. I think I mentioned that in one of my videos where I got a lot of feedback on that, where people, yeah, that's what they do. They will use that kind of stuff, or even when it comes to the hidden camera aspect, if that's what you're dealing with, they might put it in an area of your house where it's going to invade your privacy, and then they'll use that kind of information. And of course, not only does that make you paranoid, It's just it's almost a type of psychological rape. You think people are, watching you go to the bathroom or take a shower or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous, you know. But if you're a target who's been dealing with this stuff for a long time, you're gonna get to the point where you're tempted to be jaded, but don't process it that way. Just look at it for what it is. I mean, who really needs to be embarrassed about this activity? And not only that, what's going to happen? What are going to be the end result or that end, harvest? Because you're dealing with the difficult stuff now, but the people involved in this, well, they're going to reap what they're sowing. Okay, a lot of people call it karma. The people, who are not, I don't know, versed in the biblical theology that, in my opinion, is really the foundation of uh, of the targeted individual's hope. Okay, because a lot of people are talking about lawsuits, or they're talking about, maybe a whistleblower is going to come forward, and that'd be great. The problem with a lawsuit, and I've talked about this before, is, of course, if people are out there talking about someone cooking it up or whatever. Oh yeah, you got to sign this petition. Well, no. Um, Really, the problem with directed energy weapon attacks and all those types of things is, obviously, it's hard to prove who's doing it. I mean, even if you could prove a bunch of people were getting attacked with directed energy weapons, how would you prove who was doing it? You know, that's really the problem with gang stalking. Is it's so, I don't know, it's so labyrinthian and convoluted, and you got so many people involved in it. Is it's proving who's really the mastermind behind it, because there's so much, plausible deniability that bringing damages against someone, or trying to pin all this stuff, on a certain group of people or the government or whoever, it would almost be impossible. And in order to have a lawsuit, you're gonna have to do that. When people were talking about their privacy being invaded, or being put on a watch list or whatever, and but of course that's a little more specific. But under the Patriot Act, the government kind of gets away with that stuff. Um, I don't need that though. Okay, getting back to the point, my hope, is in basically the firm foundation that God's going to take care of this stuff. That eventually there is going to be a judgment day. Okay, I believe that. And by the way, the stuff that's happening over in the Middle East is proof, in my opinion. Okay, and I've talked about that stuff before. Not only do you have, you know, fulfilled Bible prophecy, right, in everybody's face. When you talk about the desolations that are determined by the prophet Jeremiah in the book of Daniel, and you have a scattering in 70 AD, and the Jewish people are scattered around the world, and now they have returned with their customs, and all these things have happened exactly. When you do the math, you've got 7 times 360, which is a Jewish year, and then of course you take that and you multiply point 9857 and convert that into solar years, at exactly from from the time of the end of the Babylonian exile to 1948, 2484, 2,484 years exactly. Is that even possible? Could that even possibly be a coincidence? I don't see it, man. Okay, and I can go into some other things, but getting back to the point, it might not be that much longer. Okay, and a lot of people talk about, well, we need a third temple. Well, and that could happen, but there's huge problems with the third temple thing too. Okay, one of them is that, I mean, think about it. When you're dealing with an abomination that makes desolate, there are certain things that have to be, I don't know, on the table. Okay. First of all, they don't have the Ark of the Covenant. I know the Jews say that they have the Ark of the Covenant, but I don't see any evidence that they have it. Okay. Second of all, what about the presence of God in the Holy of Holies? Okay, he's not honoring sacrifices anymore, and I certainly don't hold to dispensationalism, so I know that the Jews are not going to be justified by works of the law, right? So you got a huge problem there. Third big problem is that you have the Levitical priesthood. Okay, it has to be someone from the lineage of Aaron. Of course, they do have the chromosomal DNA and some of that where they could probably trace someone into that lineage, and they could probably do that. But technically, when you're looking at the abomination of desolation, standing in the holy place where it not ought to be, where it is called an it. Okay, I think that's in the book of Luke. So it's not really talking about a man or the Antichrist in the Holy of Holies. It's called an it. And you also have it referred to as an image and so on and so forth. So, it could be that they do build a third temple. Okay, I'm not totally against that. Okay, because you have Second Thessalonians, but it doesn't technically have to be that way. Okay, it could just be talking about the Dome of the Rock up there. What's written all over it? God has no son, a denial of the Trinity. You have all those things happening. So what I'm getting at, not to draw it out too long, is that this could happen a lot sooner than we believe. Okay, but anyway, that judgment aspect is reality. Okay, there's nothing is going to remain hidden about your scenario. And that's one of the things that really attacks the psychology uh, of someone being victimized by gang stalking is that no one seems to know. It's all hidden. It's your word against everyone else's. That sense of injustice is built up to a level where it's so frustrating, man. And you deal with it for years, right? And you can't get ahead. You're getting workplace harassment. You're getting harassment. You have to move around. Some targeted individuals are forced out into homelessness, and there you are, and the people are just looking at you like, oh, why don't you get why don't you get your life together? But there's nothing you can do. You're trying. You're doing everything you can, and it seems like there's a roadblock wherever you go, and it's the gang stalking. It is, and it seems like no one's ever going to find out. And targets become dysfunctional. They become paranoid. I've experienced all these things. You know, I've gotten accused of being paranoid about this or that, or well, I don't live in the world that you live in. But there's nothing you could say. You try to explain what's happening in your scenario. You try to explain the security cameras or the extra locks on your door or whatever. But it just doesn't work out. And the temptation is to believe that no one is ever going to know, that you're going to just fade out into obscurity, into, the nightmarish insanity of gang stalking. But it's not going to happen that way. And I believe that everyone is going to know about the things that are happening to you. You don't have to wait for a government lawsuit. And it would be nice if these people get caught. I'm not going to say that I don't hope for that. I do. That would be awesome. Okay, you know, it's every targeted individual's dream for the people to get caught, to be brought to justice. It could happen. Okay, it's not something that is impossible, but eventually it is, regardless of whether these people get caught by the corrupt system, by the hijacked world that you are living in now. Regardless of that, it's going to happen. Okay, and it could happen very soon. Not a lot of people, were on board with my, I don't know, my map of eschatology for the end times, but it's right there. It's in front of everybody's face. I believe that the Antichrist is going to be a Muslim. I believe, what Dr. Michael Heiser taught about the true interpretation of Armageddon or Harmogay, the Mount of Assembly, Jerusalem, is correct. And I believe that flood that they were talking about, when they put that call out to all Muslims worldwide to flood the city of Jerusalem, it's prophecy. It's eventually going to happen. And it could be a lot sooner in our future than anybody out there knows about it. And a lot of people are coming around to this, Muslim Antichrist eschatology too. This premillennial, Muslim Antichrist. I know I could mention their ministries. I'm not going to do that right now. But it's not just something that I cooked up. And if it's true, if it's right, and we're looking at the gospel being preached throughout the world, we're looking at possibly the fullness of the nations coming in. Well, I mean, there's a reason why the Jews are gathered over there. A lot of people don't believe they're, the legitimate Israelites. They are. Okay, there's DNA evidence of this stuff. It's not by mistake. I mean, you can't interpret it any other way. We could literally be at the edge of this whole thing, man. It could be just a matter of years. It could be over with, and all the stuff that you're dealing with is going to be laid out there on the table. I don't know. I definitely think that you can hope in that, guys. And we're moving up towards the 2024 election. I mean, there's a lot of things that just don't make sense. I mean, oil is cheap now. How does that work? There's oil flowing in, or excuse me, there's natural gas flowing in, you know, from Ukraine to Europe. I mean, there's all kinds of things that just don't add up with everything that we're looking at right now. Okay. And I think this election year is just going to be wild, man. Put your seatbelt on. It's going to be crazy. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, we got Ukraine, we've got this stuff over in Gaza, we've got the Middle East, just lighting on fire. And who knows what's going to happen? I definitely believe that this, literally, and I'm not just trying to pump you guys up, I think this could be over very quickly. I mean, I don't know. I think it's definitely something to remember when you believe that this is just a hopeless scenario. It's not. Targeted individuals will be vindicated. Okay. Eventually this stuff is going to come to light. Well, guys, let me see if I talked about everything I wanted to talk about. Well, now that I mentioned that stuff, there's the issue of endurance. And a lot of you guys have been doing this, for decades. Some of you guys have been targeted since you were children. Okay. You've been dealing with this stuff in your family, maybe even in school, everywhere you go, everything about your life has just been overshadowed by this harassment. And I believe it's demonic. Okay. That's that's something that I think all of you need to consider. And there's people out there that are resistant to that. And I understand you can believe whatever you want. We can agree to disagree because I know the government is involved in this stuff. Okay. There's a lot of people that are involved in gang stalking. Okay. Um, but the endurance aspect isn't always about finding solutions. It's not always about trying to win this game. It's simply about survival. It's about not being overcome by that anticipation, that terrorism that is used against targeted individuals. Okay. Because when you try to find a solution, when you get squeezed into that position where you believe you got to come up with a solution, that's a tactic of the enemy. Okay. You're not in control of other people's decisions. Okay, you're outnumbered. That's why it's called gang stalking. Okay. You have to endure though. Okay. And a lot of that is just putting one foot in front of the other. Okay. This isn't a game. It's basically what it is. It's asymmetrical warfare. Okay. You're being terrorized. It's guerrilla warfare. It's illegal. They have to obfuscate the activity. Okay. And like I said, that sense of injustice can build up, but you just have to keep going, right? Because the whole idea is to just to break the target down. And some of that gets into the area of just simple stuff like health decisions, like what your diet is. Okay, getting enough sleep. And I've talked about the fact that I've lost a lot of weight. I've modified my diet, I mean, it's intense. I got rid of sugar. I got rid of bread. I don't eat pasta. I'll eat a little bit of rice every now and again, a little bit of potatoes or whatever, some of the starchy stuff. Um, but no sugar, no bread, no fried food. I got rid of seed oil, and my inflammation is awesome. You know, but taking a good multivitamin, not something from the store. It's going to make you pee fluorescent green, because that stuff is actually pretty bad for you. Go to a health store and get something that look online, get a good multivitamin, because this stuff is stressful. It can impact your health. It's just tore me up. It's gang stalking is seriously, it's going to wear you down in every aspect if you let it. Exercise, a little bit of weightlifting, not too much. Um, you know, but distracting yourself is also important when it comes to endurance, because you can become overwhelmed and hyper focused on this stuff. And it happens to me. And I've talked about the fact that, getting into some good biblical material. And if you don't feel like reading, if you don't have enough energy, that's understandable, because gang stalking is exhausting. But once you get into some good videos, you get into some sermon videos, and just immerse yourself in those things, or get into something that is going to take your attention off, you know, negative things, that conditioning process, the flashbacks that targeted individuals can go into, that labyrinth you can get, you can fall down that rabbit hole, or even just thinking about the past. What if things could have been different? That woulda, shoulda, coulda. That's deadly too. Okay, I just found out a friend of mine, a good friend, one of my best friends, had just passed away, and nobody knows what killed him. And in my opinion, he was a targeted individual. He had been set up in a lot of different ways, and he had just got out of prison, and he'd only been out for just a short while, and now he's gone. He's only 55 years old. Um, but uh, he's in a better place. I know he was a man of faith, and there's a lot of things. I had to kind of break out of that. I was getting depressed. There's just a lot of things that are out of your control, and those things, well, you gotta you gotta put it away. If there's something that you can do, focus on that. The things that are out of your control, that's classic gang stalking. You start focusing on that, you're going to drive yourself crazy, and that's what they want. Well, guys, I've got to get going, because I'm actually cooking up some dinner right now, and it looks like it's almost ready. But I love you guys. I would love to see someone use that referral for DoorDash. Like I said, 600 bucks, you can't beat that. 6 deliveries, 5 days a week. You got 2 months to do it. If you've been dealing with workplace harassment, it is the solution. I'm telling you, you got to be your own boss. You get a write off, all those miles. You're not going to be paying hardly anything in taxes at all, if anything, and you get Medicaid. You know. Anyway, I love you guys. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.